Welcome to today's webinar, courtesy of the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. Discover no-cost, valuable business services to help you thrive, whether starting your entrepreneurial journey or scaling your existing business. We have the resources and expertise to help you succeed. For more information, please visit our website or text 502-977-5800. Thank you for joining us today. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions or engage with our speaker. Let's get started.
Hey, welcome everyone to another Toolkit Tuesday. So glad to have you here. It's a great Tuesday morning or afternoon here in Louisville, Kentucky. Glad to see you. And as always, I'm joined by my good friend and coworker, Janet Flaw. How you doing, Janet?
Doing good. I'm back. Wasn't here last
Yep.
week, but good to see you.
We made it without you, barely made it. But yeah, it's good. So thanks for joining us. You know, if you don't know, I'm Dave Etkin. I'm the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. If you need help starting, funding, or running your business, we're the folks to call. That's what we do every day, where it's always free. Just get on our website, KentuckySBDC.com/Louisville. Be happy to talk to you and see what we can do. And as always, just to make sure that everybody can see and hear us, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see a little toolbar down there. And if you click on that, it'll pop right up. And if you wouldn't mind just putting your name and where you're joining us from, because I like to do that and see where everybody is. And that way I know the people are out there. I can see you guys kind of popping in, but just to make sure. So, hey, Nicole. Nicole's here in Louisville, Kentucky, sunny Louisville. Judy from Lexington, Linda, Ellen. Hey, Ellen. From Louisville. Gosh, I'm seeing everybody kind of pop in here. Makisha, hey, how are you? Deirdre, Louisville, Matt in Lexington, Philadelphia, sweet. I'll be up in your way in July. Dallas, April, yeah, everybody's popping in. So thanks for joining us. It's great. I do want to give a quick shout out to a couple folks that Allison and Nathan. We spent some time with them at Canoe, Kentucky, down in Frankfort. So check those guys out. They do a fantastic job, and just wanted to say hi for showing me such a great time. So now down to business. You know, getting your name out and marketing and social media and all that is. Everyone talks about that. I need to get some customers, so I don't hit up social media. And really, the real reason why you do these things is you're trying to show the world that you're the expert at what you do. But you know, really, there is no better way to share what you know and prove yourself as the expert is to do something regular like a podcast. And you know, I have aspired to have a podcast of my own, and so I've invited my good friend. Ellie Puckett, who owns Resonate Studios, who is a podcast expert, here to come and share with us some of the cool things that they're into and how you can set one up on your own and really hopefully make a big difference in your business. Hey, Ellie.
Hey, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm so excited to be with you all.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting. So if you have any questions or comments, and especially this is an opportunity to really talk to an expert. So if you have some sort of question that's specific to what you're particularly asking, you know, wondering about, don't hesitate to ask. This is what we're here for. So just put it in the chat. We'll get right to it and make sure we'll be here as long as we need to be to get everybody's questions answered or comments or whatever. So, Ellie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi. Thank you all for having me. Like Dave said, my name is Ellie Puckett. I'm the CEO at Resonate Recordings, and we are a remote first podcast production company. And I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my presentation with you all because I do have slides to accompany this part. But so we are a remote full service podcast production company, and we help our clients with the strategy and execution of podcasting. And provide services around strategy, editing, and post-production support, and then kind of how you grow that show after you get it launched. And so we're going to talk through a lot of different things today. And Dave, do you want me to go into me, or do you want me to start down the whole path? Because I have a slide on me here in a second.
You do whatever you want to do.
All right, cool.
Your show.
Well, thank you for having me. I love the Small Business Development Center, and you'll know why here in just a second for those of you who aren't familiar with me. But at Resonate, our mission is to elevate stories that matter through the power of podcasting. And so that story might be your nonprofit's mission. It might be your business's mission. It could be a story that you feel like needs to be told. It doesn't matter what the mission or message is. Resonate is here to help you elevate it and get it to that target audience. Because ultimately, or because we've been doing this for a long time. And so our industry span, and while the majority of our customers are B2B at this point, we have supported true crime, celebrity shows, everything that you can really think of when you think of podcasting. Resonate has done it because we've been around for 12 years and have produced over 3,000 podcasts and over 50,000 episodes. And so whether that be a passion project or something that connects into the business, we are the podcast experts, and we want you to be the expert in whatever you're the expert in, because we believe that your story matters and we want to help you share it. Today, we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I feel like first you should know a little bit about me, which is that I actually came to Resonate 2.5 years ago via acquisition. So I spent my first 10 years of my career in the entrepreneurial support industry. I've even helped with the Small Business Development Center. I did the sister to it, which was used to be called Enterprise Core in Louisville. It is now Amplify Louisville. But all of it is economic development based entrepreneurial support. And so the idea and concept is that if you help small businesses grow, that the community grows and that we all thrive. And that is really where my passion lives. And it is because of that passion that when introduced to acquisition entrepreneurship, I felt like I didn't know enough about it. And I didn't think that other women and professionals knew enough about acquisition entrepreneurship. And so as I discovered and looked for something to buy, I started a podcast. That podcast was aimed at bringing me clients and at learning as much as I possibly could about acquisition entrepreneurship and educating other business owners and people about it. And so it had this like threefold purpose, and I started blind without a strategy. And so you're going to get to learn from all the mistakes that I made. But on that journey of creating a podcast, I was introduced to Resonate Recordings, and I ended up acquiring a podcast production company. And so I really come to this world from the desire to help small business owners and businesses get their message out there, because that is how I came to podcasting, being more on the business side of that. So today we're going to talk about why I believe leaders and business owners should have a podcast, and the 101 or the steps of the strategy so that you could build your own strategy and get started on your own. And so first, I think it's important to understand why we know that podcasting is a very good medium for business owners and for leaders. And so to set the landscape, there are 584 million podcast listeners worldwide. We're over 150 million podcast listeners on a monthly basis and weekly basis that are regularly listening. But there is a just massive portion of people who have at least listened to a podcast and are familiar with what one is. And so this type of medium is really spread even beyond what like social media has age-wise, demographic-wise, who listens and how we interact. The vast majority of people worldwide listen to podcasts. What's interesting isn't the number of people who listen. It's actually that 85% of those listeners trust the information that they're getting from a podcast. And this is what separates podcasting from other mediums. The trust is still there. And the reason why the trust is still there is because weekly podcast listeners listen for 7 hours per week on average. They are given an enormous amount of their time creating a parasocial relationship with that host and believing and understanding and trusting and feeling like they have a relationship with that podcaster that gives them the trust that they need. And that trust leads to buying decisions. So 76% of weekly podcast listeners have made a purchase based on a host-read ad from a podcast. So it is an incredibly impactful medium because it builds trust and leads to action. And so for that reason, I believe that it is a very good companion to a business strategy, a marketing strategy for a business or a nonprofit or anywhere that you really need to educate, build value, and trust. So when we talk about how it can support a business, we're going to go through several areas, but the first is visibility. And the reason why I believe that visibility is important is all of us are trying our best to show up in a million places these days, right? I normally have a podcast mic and a whole setup, but I am also traveling today. So if you can hear the insanely loud noise behind me, I apologize. But when we talk about all the different places that small business owners need to show up in the digital world today, visibility and gaining the visibility of our target listeners is hard. Actually, I'm stealing my next slide. So podcasts can drive visibility where that content already lives, no matter the platform, because we're going to talk about breaking that long form value added podcast into multiple visibility streams, where you can show up in multiple platforms thanks to a long format podcast. Podcasts not only drive that visibility, but they drive authenticity. And right now, this is something that humanity is craving. In a world filled with AI and social media influencers and all of these different things, people are craving authenticity. They're creating honesty and truth, and that is something that you can build in a podcast world. Next, once you've gotten that visibility and they trust you and built that authenticity, this medium helps you nurture your pipeline. It keeps people engaged and thinking about you. It helps with those, the famous 7 contacts to make a purchase. They can be having these nurturing contacts with you on their own, helping make sure that they know that you are what they are looking for and that you can bring what the service, the support, whatever it is that that client is searching for. Next is authentic connection. Often podcasts lead to other types of communities, connections, in the digital space and sometimes in person, but it can that continued build of that trust. Also connection in the internal sense. So most of us here, I'm assuming, are small business owners, but one thing that I think I want everyone to know is that big companies use podcast for internal connection as well. Podcasts that you may never see, but they are using them to connect into their road warrior sales force that is driving all over the town, international employees. How do we create connection and community and communication across borders? And so there are more ways to think about podcasting than just external based shows. And then the last is engagement. Podcasts over time drive action. And so whatever it is that you are trying to help that listener do, podcasts have a higher than normal success rate of other mediums to actually getting someone to make that next action, whether that be purchase your product or service or course or community or whatever it is that you want them to do, donate, volunteer, whatever that end ROI goal is, that engagement and action is higher in podcasting. Why is that? Well, we've talked about the time, but also because we can use a podcast to create content across multiple platforms. So this is a tool in the tool belt when you feel like I can't come up with a million ideas for every different platform. I need a LinkedIn idea, and I need an Instagram idea, and I need a newsletter idea, and I need the list goes on and on. How do I build my SEO up on my website? All of these things can actually be supported by a podcast. You make one long form, value driven piece of content, and then you can cut it up into other platforms. So that topic, say we're thinking about, let me think of a good topic. We're actually going to we'll use one of my favorite clients throughout this, which is shared practices. They are a dental uh, um, consulting agency. So they help dentists who got trained as dentists but didn't necessarily get trained as business owners. They help dentists with the business side. Their podcast drives 95% of their business and their leads. That they have thousands of listeners every month that eventually convert into the majority of their revenue. And most of their clients are interacting with their podcast in some way, shape, or form. So they create an episode that is, say, they're talking about cash flow for dentists is the topic of the week. They would then make the long form episode based on cash flow for dentists. That it could be the intro of their newsletter and then linking to the long form episode. They can fill their social media with the high value clips that came out of that long form episode and share those across all of their platforms. The transcripts get uploaded to their website and help their SEO. All of these aspects came from one long form conversation about cash flow in dentist practices. And so that is one way of seeing how it can basically fill the content engine, like I like to call it. But to get all of this value, I think that a lot of people think I'll just slap a podcast together and run, and all of these things just work. And the reality is that it's actually not the easiest medium to get into. If you're here for vanity instead of value, if you're not interested in learning, this is not the right medium for you because it does take time, energy, and effort, even when you outsource it. And so you can put in all that time, energy, and effort and still not reach the ROI that you're hoping for because you need a strategy. You don't just need two mics and a conversation. You need some thought process on the front end to make sure you reach your ultimate goal. So now we're kind of moving into the meat of podcasting 101, and how do you make a successful show? These are the steps that we like to think about at Resonate. Step one, discovery and differentiation, understanding your goals, your ideal listeners, your competitors, the concept, and doing the research and how you might position yourself differently. Then getting deeper into strategy around your launch, your SEO, and how you are taking the differentiation that you learned and applying it to the show. Launch is really important to help you kind of get that first boost in visibility. After we get through this portion, we're talking about how do we build up scalable systems so that you are able to do this repetitively and at a cadence that is consistent so the audience knows what to expect without it taking too much time, energy, and effort from you. Once we have our systems going, then we're looking at marketing and growth and how do we grow this show to meet your needs. And then last but not least, how do we measure towards that ROI and then repeat these kind of testing systems until we reach our goal. I need one moment. I'm sorry. My dog is scratching. Give me just a minute. Open that door so that's not a problem anymore. All right. So where I want us to begin is defining the ROI. We're going to do a activity here in just a second. Know that this is core to it. So start thinking, what is my return on investment? If your return on your investment is to get famous, you're not ready to podcast. This is a value first platform. If visibility, fame, or monetization on the podcast works out, great. But if that is the reason why you're here for the wrong reason. And so let's really think about what is the ROI that I'm hoping for, and how are we going to measure that return on investment? Because often people don't really know what they're hoping to get out of it, and then they don't build a system towards that. And then they also have no idea if it's actually working or not. And so all of these things can lead to feeling like the podcast didn't work. And really, either your strategy didn't work, or maybe it was, and you didn't actually define the system for the ROI. So what does that look like for you? And it can be multiple of these, but we need to really define it well. Next, we need to understand your target audience. One of the biggest offenders of this when we're in a sales conversation is universities. They want to create a podcast, and they want that podcast to be aimed at the donors and the future employees and the staff of the university. And these are all different. We're talking about a 16-year-old and a 60-year-old. These target audiences are too difficult to accomplish in one show. And so once we've defined what that ROI is, who is the target audience for that ROI? So if we're trying to get more students enrolled, then we need to aim this at a student-based population. That is going to be a different show than if we're trying to get donors to engage with the work that we're doing. And so thinking about, what is my ROI? Who is the audience I'm aimed at? Is it my client? Am I trying to reach a new client? Do I really understand what my offer is? Who is it serving? How do they feel? And what do they want? What do I want them to do about it? And so, we're looking at demographics and psychographics and where they are in space and time, and what actions are we looking for them to take, and really exploring that. So I'm going to take a moment for us to really think about the things that I have covered so far. If you can, I'm going to check any questions in the chat while I give you all a few minutes to do this. But I would love some volunteers at the end, just like maybe one or two that I can read. I don't know that I have access to give you all. So just maybe let me know, what do you want out of it? Who is it for? What is it about? What value are you providing? And what action do you want them to take? Give you a couple of minutes and I'll check the chat and see if anybody has any questions so far, or anything you want to make tips on setting up Spotify. Okay, sounds good. All right, I have Spotify and tips on monetizing. We'll definitely get there. Does anybody have, if you are already an existing show, asking about monetizing and things, please feel free to be one of the people who tells us, what do you want out of it? Who is it for? What is it about? What value do you provide? And what action can they take? Specific thoughts on catching attention. I can definitely talk about that as well. All right. Does anybody want to share their thoughts? Waiting for people to share is super painful. It's probably been 10 seconds, but it feels like an hour.
Well, Ellie, it's a big step sometimes to throw something on the chat,
All right, well, we'll keep going. We're going to keep going, but please take a moment if you need to screenshot this. It's the basic of your strategy outline. I would not call it the entire strategy, but we're going to keep diving in a little bit further. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about after you've got those things sorted, who is it for? What is it about? What value do I provide? What action do I want them to take? We are going to work on visibility from day one. So now we're getting like to 201 in strategy. And I'm even providing some AI prompts for you. I want you to give the AI everything that you just wrote down. ROI, everything I just covered. Then I want you to add in prompt one, based on my goals, target audience, and product. What are the 15 podcasts that are most likely to be competitive to this concept and why? And it will give you about 15 shows. And then I want you to take those shows and look at them and determine which 5 you feel like are truly competitive to your show. All right. And then with these, awesome. Thank you, John. You're the bomb. He says, I'm interested in educating people about high-end plumbing fixtures, bigots, hybrid water heaters, and bidets. It says bidets. Bidets, water heaters, and backup sump pumps, etc. Thank you. Sorry for my lack of English skills. That is a great thought process on this. John, I'm going to assume you're a plumber. So, John, plumber, value bringing to people, I would want you to dive in deeper on who do you mean by people. In this sentence, they would need to be a homeowner, right? So it's not just and beyond homeowners, it's probably homeowners with disposable income who might put in a bidet. Wow, bidet. So think about who that target audience is and dig, right? After you do that, then you'd start with that first AI prompt. You'd give it all the information that you just wrote. Then you'd give it the prompt, and then it's going to give you 15 shows. You're going to look through those 15 shows and decide which 5 you feel are the closest aligned to yours. And then you're going to say, hey, these 5 that you picked out are the closest aligned to my show. Can you analyze their metadata and tell me the SEO keywords and phrases that appear the most? All right. Then after it gives you that information back, you're going to say, based on this information, give me a list of 20 keywords that I should target. Balance the search volume and difficulty of these keywords. Please make this into a table, including the information on volume, difficulty, and reasoning why ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini thinks that this is the keywords that you should use. Now, there could be a lot more strategy put into keywords. I'm giving you the TLDR cheat version to get going. And also sometimes I feel like we overcomplicate things. So feel free to screenshot this, make sure that you use these prompts to help you get a starting point. The reason why this is so important is this is the step that most people are missing. And this helps you build visibility from day one for your website, for SEO and GEO, search everywhere optimization, and with agentic AI. So these thought processes are very important to building out the visibility strategy and the ROI that you're likely going to want. Because whatever your ROI is, it is likely to get some sort of engagement and visibility to your business. And so this is a key step that most people are missing when they go to podcast. From there, here is one of those things that someone asked me about. Someone said the potential renaming. Perfect. So when we get to the naming, what people don't realize is now we are actually not trying to be catchy. We are trying to be descriptive and clear. Let me give you an example. We have a show, love the show, great show. I actually feel bad that I'm going to say this out loud and I probably shouldn't be, but Know It All is the name of a show that we make for a client. This was a full stop, non-negotiable topic for her. Know It All. What is that show about? You have absolutely no idea. She was a former news anchor and has some fame, so it actually can fly for her. However, the concept isn't very clear. So when someone lands in their search on Apple or Spotify, or they ask their AI, what podcast should I talk about for this topic? It doesn't automatically know or automatically trigger that person, that target audience's knowing that they are in the right place. So the days of cute titles are over. That includes mine, Renegade Ventures. You don't necessarily know what that's about. So I've added a subtitle to make it more clear that it is about buying and building businesses. And so we need those titles to be descriptive and clear. We need that cover art to be clean and clear. These are things that we think about when trying to gain the visibility and the eyeballs and the clicks from our target audience. The next is show description, value proposition. So here we're looking for you to use at least the same as episode description. We want 2,000 characters. We want this to have a very clear hook because they can only see a small portion. So starting it with "this podcast is about" is wasting characters. We want you to plop them right in, hook them in, tell them your value proposition within those first 100 characters so that they can see it without having to click. And the whole point is making them to click and look and read more, right? For the internet's sake, we want this to be filled with your keywords without doing the whole ugly keyword stuffing. It needs to be natural language. I would use AI to help you. Based on these keywords and the topic of my show, help me write a show description. Give me 3 versions of it that are optimized for these reasons. And I would continue to do this until you feel like it is both representative of you and your brand and meets the things that I have written here. So with your titles, more than likely, they aren't going to find your show. They are going to find an individual episode of your show, and that is how they'll find your show. And so titles and descriptions for your individual episodes are just as important, if not more important, than your show name and description. On those titles, this is in the weeds, right? But the key thing I want you to know here is screenshot it and use it. So we're looking for the target keyword, or we're looking for each episode title to have one of your keywords that you're targeting. Back to our dental practice example, they might want to have it to say cash flow for solo dental practice owners, right? And so that would capture a lot of their keywords and their target audience. And they've also indicated that this specific episode is about cash flow. So when I, as a dentist owner, know that I'm really feeling like I don't exactly know how to manage cash flow because the insurance companies aren't paying quickly enough, I know that this is the episode I should engage with first. And if I like this episode, then maybe I'll listen to more. So here, I don't want to get you so worried and in the weeds about this in this moment, but this is like key. So if you already have a show and in the future after you've developed your show. But this is why you must do the step before, the strategy plus the keywords. All right. I want you to notice that I have not yet talked about mic, lighting, video versus audio, any of these topics, and it's because they don't matter. Now, it's not that they don't matter, period. They absolutely do. My job is to make your audio sound great, but it turns out a company like mine can almost make your trashy audio sound great. We're going to want you to use a good mic. We're going to teach you how to do it, but often people get bogged down in these details when honestly, that isn't more important than the strategy. That isn't more important than how you get found. You, I'm sure, have listened to a podcast that is wildly successful that sounds like crap and wondered how. It is because the content and the strategy are way more important than the audio quality. Audio quality will matter next. So we want to set you up for success. We want you to come work with us and let us make you look professional, especially if you're getting brand deals. That's when that comes in. But I don't want it to be the thing that stops you from making a podcast. I would rather you spend money on me teaching you strategy than I would on you editing. But I also want you to spend money with me editing. But that's not why we're here. You can make a DIY show using the strategy I'm outlaying for you without needing to engage a production company at all. And so we want to win you because we help you grow, not because we're trying to sell those things. And so make sure you screenshot these so you can DIY your way through it. The last thing I want to make sure that you know is that to get the full power of your show, you need to connect them into some sort of email capture, freebie, funnel that captures that information and connects them to your goal. And that is true whatever platform they are on. You cannot expect them to go from Instagram watching your clip over to your podcast. So go ahead and make your call to action there. To back to the website, and then maybe they'll nurture themselves in your podcast. But you want to make your goal call to action in whatever platform they are engaging with your content first, whether that be the podcast or the social or the newsletter or the LinkedIn. I guess that's social. But make that call to action to your ROI wherever they are at, because we are trying to move them through your pipeline. And that connection is really important. Often people are like, I don't know if the podcast is working, and you never told them what to do or how to do it. And so make sure you are connecting it all back in. Make sure your transcripts are landing on the website so that all of this engine gets flowing and going. It's a lot of setup, but I swear it pays off. All right. My next tips are about the launch and when you're thinking about beyond the content. So for me, I want you to know that it is more important that you build for longevity. So audio versus video. Video will provide value. It is not more important than doing it at all. Audio only still works as a medium. It still gives you a content. It can still give you social media assets without having to do a fully video-based podcast if video is going to keep you from doing a podcast because of money, complexity, and time. Audio is easier. So if that means starting with audio only and then moving to video when you've got it down, if you have the budget and time, then start with the video. But the goal is build for longevity, build for consistency. Get your brain into this is going to be a 2-year process, or at least a 18 months before you might even really feel that ROI impact. It can happen a lot faster. We have seen it happen really quickly for people, but it doesn't provide the most that it can provide until you get in a consistent flow and build that trust with the audience over time. And so anybody who comes to me and says they're going to just try it out and see, they're going to do 6 episodes and see, this is a red flag. You're going to see that it cost you money and brought you nothing. Maybe not nothing, but it is a far lower impact and than a ongoing, consistent show. Even if you do it in seasons, making sure that everyone understands when those seasons are happening, when those episodes are happening. Consistency over long term is key. Simplify the process, batch record, make sure you have systems in place, checklists, and support. Keep them listening. When you launch that show, you want to launch it with at least 3 episodes, ideally 5, and a trailer. This goes back into Spotify, and I'll get to that question at the end. And a reminder that even though podcasting is marketing, it is actually kind of more like a product and marketing all in one. And so you have to market the podcast before the whole thing starts flowing the way that you want. And so marketing this show is vital, especially in the beginning. All right. I have just a few more slides and I'm going to answer all of your questions. But I want to make sure that I hit on that real businesses have gotten real value out of podcasting. We make all of the shows for UBS's financial advisors. So if a financial advisor wants to make a podcast, we help them with that. And that those podcasts have led to built trust with their customers and new customers because their business works so heavily on referrals that someone can refer and give that podcast to help that relationship get going in the front end. We make an internal podcast for Salesforce where they're talking to all their engineers and their entire global team. They actually have multiple internal podcasts aimed at their clients. And then, like I said, Shared Practices is a show for dentists about the business side of dentistry. And 95% of their clients touch or come through the podcast itself. And so when set up right, these can have extremely real values for your business. So what should you do next? If you are in the curious column, I'm curious about having a podcast. I showed up today because I'm trying to figure out what I should do or where I should begin. You need to start with defining your concept, listener, and competition. Start in the strategy. If you are already in the planning mode, it might be time, if you've already taken care of the strategy, then you're probably at the outlining your 6 episode ideas and making sure they line with your keyword phrases. If you're already launched, I would go to the keywords and go work on those call to actions and your SEO and improving that workflow. And then if you are growing, we need to talk about, is your funnel optimized? Are you hitting all those SEO points? And are you ready for seeking partnerships or monetization? You don't need to do everything all at once. You just need to start with clarity and one step at a time. I know that this is a ton of information. For my idea people, we have a readiness assessment on our website that it does lead to our sales team. So know that if you screenshot this, but there's no pressure. It'll help you learn about the podcasting readiness of if you're at the point where you're ready to start a show. And then now I'm going to take questions specific to what you guys wanted and needed. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll bring it back if someone has a specific question about it. But I did see some questions come through.
Yeah,
so let me.
quite a bit.
Yeah,
Quite a
so
few questions.
let's do this. All right.
Let's do this.
Let's start with. Dave, do you want to direct it?
Yeah, let's just start at the top with Tom, and he asked about how to just basically set Spotify. How do you set up on Spotify? Where is that? That's probably not the place to start, but
it's okay.
What's your thoughts?
So what you need is everybody needs to have an audio-based podcast that get onto the platforms. You need an RSS feed. So those RSS feeds they're hosted. And similar to like hosting a website at GoDaddy, you need a host provider of that. Resonate has one, but this is when you think of like Podbean, Buzzsprout, so on and so forth. Spotify has their own and it is free. So if you mean that, you would go to Spotify for creators, create an account, and generate an RSS feed directly there. You still need a Spotify for creators account, even if you got your RSS feed from Resonate or Podbean or Buzzsprout. And then once you've generated that RSS feed, you go and you create an account at Spotify, and then you give them the RSS feed. There is a spot for it in their setup process that you give them the RSS feed. If you're doing video on Spotify, they have not made it to where we can automatically post video to Spotify yet. There's a few providers in beta testing. We are trying to figure out how we can automatically post to Spotify the video portion as well. But you'll actually have to go put your video on Spotify separately because all of that is still in its beta with most hosting providers. So just know that if you've hosted somewhere else that you will need to, and you want to do video, you'll need to do that separately. I would need to know exactly what issue you're having within Spotify to address that. So maybe If you still need some more support, we take that at the very end since it's going to get hyper specific to your situation. But there's the general gist. You'll need to set up a hosting provider. You'll need to set up accounts at Spotify, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, and Audible, or iHeartRadio, and then go give each of those places your RSS feed. And once you give it to them, when you post something, it should show up on those listening platforms.
Mm,
Hopefully that answered the question.
yeah. Rachel asked
Monetizing.
tips on monetizing. Everybody's question, right?
The number one way to monetize your podcast is to sell them your product or service, not to go the CPM or the monetization with ads route. And the reason why is CPM is what it's called, and you've probably seen it. If you already have a podcast and you're hosting somewhere, you'll see that they pay a certain dollar amount per CPM. That's cost per mil, which is 1,000. So you need thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners, because that might look like $30 per thousand, right? So you would need thousands of listeners to really monetize well that way. That doesn't mean you shouldn't if you have that option, if those platforms are allowing for it. Sure, take the win, right? But the majority of podcasters are making the majority of their money, including the big ones, off of monetizing their audience.
Yeah.
Think of even some of the biggest ones. They end up selling you something, even if it's not a digital product that they created. They have partnerships for those digital products, and then they sell that. And that is actually how they're making the majority of the money off of the show. And so while you should monetize YouTube and Spotify or these other places, don't expect the big bucks to come from there. Expect it to come from your core product, service, or whatever you're choosing to monetize as maybe your first offer, your entry experience, as Stacy Tuschel from Well Oiled Operation would call it. Maybe you have something that is an entry experience that you charge just a tiny amount of money for to get you going, and then that you can convert them to a large dollar client later. But think about what that is so that you can monetize it, and that's actually the number one way to go about it. Then the next would be brand deals and partnerships that you coordinate individually. So again, not going through the platforms, but individually coordinating them. To monetize with a network, you need to be in the 50,000 downloads per episode range. So if you are going to go network big, they'll start talking to you around 10,000 downloads an episode, or like in the 10 to 20,000 per month. But you won't really get good like network deals until you're over that 50, 80, 100,000 downloads a month range. And so that's why it's really not the best play for most people. We see people with much smaller audiences monetizing for as much, if not plenty of money. Let that route be for the entertainment people, for the true crime, for the narrative based. And then if you get there, great, but don't wait for there to monetize. So individual brand partnerships that you might have. So plumbing idea would be maybe if you make a deal with the bidet company, and that would be a good way. That way you're promoting that specific product and monetizing your podcast that way, because not every listener is going to maybe be able to use you as a plumbing service. And so thinking about it that way is the better way to go about it.
Yeah. Nicole says she received feedback from Spotify that her title wasn't catchy enough. So thoughts on catching attention?
Yeah, I would go descriptive. And so when they say catchy enough, it means that for whatever reason, people aren't stopping, and that might just mean it's not clear enough. And that could also be an issue with your cover art as much as your title, but it's probably not able to give you that kind of automated feedback. If you want feedback on it, you can book a call with our sales team, and not buy anything, but they can give you some feedback on it, so that they can look at yours individually, or you can shoot me an email, and I can take a look at it. But it might take me longer than it would take them because they have availability tomorrow. So that I would have someone lay eyes on it to give you specific feedback about it. What you need to remember is that people are viewing these thumbnails in a very small format. And so your words need to be big, your point needs to be clear, your title needs to be descriptive. And so if you have a title that is like mine, Renegade Ventures, I would pair it with a subtitle. And so shared practices is a good example. They've seen an increased listeners since they went from just shared practice to your business, your dental business roadmap is their subtitle. It's very clear. It's about dental businesses in that subtitle. And so consider adding a subtitle if you feel very attached to the title.
John asked about his stuff again. John Bergen, who owns BK Plumbing. He was one of our Pacesetter Awards winners this year, statewide. His company, statewide Pacesetter Award. Jesus. So yeah, great company, great guy. So he wants to educate, of course, people about his high-end plumbing fixtures, bidets and stuff. So you kind of talked about that, but maybe give him another tip or two there.
Yeah, he was actually the only answer of the strategy
exactly.
question.
Yeah.
As the only answer, I will reward you if you book a call with me. I will give you my time, energy, and intention. It might take me a week or two, but I would happily give that to you. My tip would be people is not clear enough. I kind of led to that to begin with.
Yeah.
You are probably competing with, there might be other plumbing podcasts, you would be surprised, but are those podcasts aimed at a general public, or are they aimed at people that are trying to become master plumbers? Thinking about that next level of who is the listener on the competitive podcast. And so you might be more competitive to a general home improvement show or something. So making sure that you find that competitor and figure out who your target market really is. And I would argue that your target market, from the amount of information I know, is likely a homeowner above the age of 35 that is maybe male leaning. I don't want to hardcore assume that, because we have a lot of DIY women out there who are doing a lot of projects. So, but likely with you being a man talking about this topic, that it might be aimed a little bit more towards a over 30, under 65-year-old person. Their income is probably over $100,000 a year because they're considering things like hybrid water heaters and bidets and extra sump pumps, so they have disposable income. So thinking at that level of detail, it is not educating people. My 17-year-old niece who listens to podcasts doesn't give a crap about your bidet crap. So thinking about those kinds of like level of detail so that you're making your written content at that target user. And how you would write to my 17-year-old niece and how you would write to that target person is very different. It has a completely different set of language that you don't need Urban Dictionary for. If you were talking to the 17-year-old, you would need the Urban Dictionary to translate into that speak that she uses that I don't understand. So, those are thinking about how you do that written content is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I see. My podcast is youth aging out of foster care. So I got another one. So if you filled it in, we'll make sure that you get my contact information at the back half here. It is Ellie at resonaterecordings.com. My name, ELLIE at resonaterecordings.com. And then make sure you put in the subject line that you're coming from the SBDC webinar so my assistant knows.
Yeah. Youth aging out. Anything you want to say about that?
Sure. Youth aging out of foster care and the resources available to them to thrive. If this is a podcast out of passion, I would immediately look to the partnerships of nonprofits that might be able to support this if you promote those nonprofits. And also for volunteers and other things. So you could use multiple that are the resources that help you pay for this, because it is a lot of money and time. So even if you're not trying to make money off of it, you probably need to at least make sure it covers the cost of making it. Another tip for this particular topic, with the amount of information that I have, is that so you could also, there are podcast grants. Now that does, I don't know how I've not known of anyone who's like really gotten one as an individual podcaster, but they do exist. Give it a Google search or an AI search and they could help you find them. And then but I have heard of nonprofits getting grants for making podcasts. We actually make one for Boston Children's and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation right now. And so that is a grant funded podcast, and that's not our only grant funded podcast. So for those kinds of purposes, consider that.
Let's see. My podcast is a lifestyle and personal development podcast to inspire and provide coaching and insight on how to overcome obstacles and meet goals, and hear conversations with others about their experiences. Based on what you've shared, I feel like I need a reset, rename, and relaunch. What do you think of that?
That's probably very possible. And the first place I would start is really auditing your show, taking a moment to give your RSS feed into your AI platform of choice, and giving it as much information you can, data, stats, the title and description, and asking it to tell you some strengths and weaknesses and go from there. This is a service that we provide, but it is possible to do on your own as well. And so if you want to feed it to a model, give it some of your competitors, ask it what it does, what you're doing well, and what you need to improve on. Another way to assess this is another tool that we use called OSHA. It helps with podcast SEO, but it gives you ranking against your competitors based on their SEO as well. So some data that you don't have right now that might really help. You might think you know the competitors based on the little search you did. It will tell you which competitors are showing up for that keyword. And you might realize that you've actually are looking at the wrong keywords completely, because what's showing up is not what your show is about, or vice versa. And so I think using some tools can get you there, assessing your show on a DIY version of assessing. And if you do feel like you need a reset, rename, relaunch, and you want support, then please book a call. We would love to learn more.
FG says, "Hey Dave, what kind of camera and mic are you using?" Well, that's an odd question, but yeah, I got a Shure F7, I think, which is a good mic. My camera is just a little POS, if you know what that stands for, that you stick on the top of your monitor. So there's that.
I can give a recommendation also.
Please do go for it.
We recommend that Shure a regular basis. It is a very great mic. That's a M7.
Yes.
And you want to, for all of these people here, you're likely going to want to make sure that your mic is USB and plugs directly into your laptop, so you don't need other tools, and so that you can use it while you're doing Zoom calls. And so know that you want that. We also recommend the Rode Pod mic. It is a little cheaper than the one that he is using, but both of those mics are really very strong mics. They're the Pod mic, I believe, is $200. I think that one right now might be more like $350. It just depends. They run sales. Amazon Black Friday thing is happening, or whatever.
Yeah, right around the corner.
Yeah. There are other mics that are cheaper than that, and or even hybrid ones, so that you can do the whole walk around and talk thing with socials if you desire, that we would recommend. And then from a camera standpoint, we like the Logitech 5K. I would have to tell you the exact model that we like. We also like, there's one called Elgato. That's a 5K web mic cam that we use. I typically am on a full camera, which is the Sony um, FX30. It's like a Pro-Am video cam that is a full camera, and we mount it to a prompter for me. And then I use the Rode Pod mic. But the Elgato one is very strong, and you can get the prompter to go with it, and it's a very nice situation so that you're looking directly at the eyes of the people by using the prompter view. So we recommend that regularly if you're curious.
Yeah. Those two things, just from my personal, what I like is like if I'm listening to a podcast or watching a YouTube video and the sound is bad, I have a hard time engaging.
Mhm.
And the same way with video, if continually whoever's talking is looking off somewhere, it's hard for me to be engaged. You put those two together, I'm just clicking off, I can't deal with it,
Yeah,
with my
yeah.
ADD, just like I'm gone, so.
Yeah, and so if you're going to do video, I do suggest that you invest in a separate webcam than what your MacBook or
Yeah.
laptop has. And then the next level would be adding that Elgato prompter. There's a couple other makers out there of different ones, but we've had a lot of success with the Elgato and it's not very expensive. So it's something that we recommend on a regular basis.
Keisha asks, hello, haven't heard from you in a while. Hope you're doing well. My podcast is called Saturdays with Makisha. Do you think every week is too much? Thinking of switching to bi-weekly or monthly, but not sure. What do you think?
No, every week is the preferred ideal. And we would be encouraging most people to consider going weekly. To be completely frank and honest, most of our business owners are on a bi-monthly. So you're not necessarily, I'm not saying, oh God, don't go back. It is more important that you stick with it and stay consistent than it is to be weekly or bi-weekly. Monthly is too little. So very flat, plain and clear. If you're going to go monthly, forget doing it monthly. Let's just consider seasonality for you. Get 8 to 12 episodes out and do weekly for 8 to 12 weeks and then take a break. But just be honest with your audience up front. But those are all things that are going to prevent barriers of getting the listener consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Bi-weekly is fine in the sense that you can get listeners consistent and keep some sanity. However, weekly would be considered best practice in the industry at this point. So I think of bi-weekly as my content engine builders rather than my podcast listener builders. So it has a lot of value. It's going to build out your SEO. It's going to, over time, it's still going to give you a lot of benefit, but you might not ever get to 50, 60, 70, 80,000 downloads. We're looking at a different scale of the number of listeners per episode because you really have to create that weekly habit for people to really grow the show. So,
yeah. Just as an aside, when you start doing these things, I've noticed that you as a professional, your personal growth really exponentially increases because you're also learning your craft as you're doing this. So it's well worth doing, I think. Aprila says, what about a podcast for caregiver business? Do I need one?
Oh, I think a caregiver business would be an insanely good place to have a podcast. And so the reason why I think so is because I'm assuming you mean senior caregiver. So
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, please let me know. But regardless, caregivers are being hired by people, often the generation, the children, if we're talking about senior caregivers, but also I am hiring child caregivers too, right? But when you look at senior caregiving, it comes with so many unknowns. You were taught how to raise a child, sort of. You figure it out. They don't know. They're not complaining. You get seniors, it's a different experience completely, right? You're dealing with different levels of like cognitive decline. You're dealing with wanting to make sure you're still respecting someone's free will. There's so much more complexity there, which means there's so much more to educate on. And people like me who are trying to figure out what is the boundaries. What if I'm afraid that my person is experiencing some Alzheimer's? Is it time to have a caregiver in the house? Am I overreacting or underreacting? How do I get over the fact that I now have to change my parents' diaper? Like, or puke, or I don't even do my own children's puke, okay? My husband knew when he married me that this was thoroughly his job because I just can't handle it. So one time he cleaned up my mom's, right? Like, I am that level of not okay with it. These are things that people like me who are thinking about what do I do with my elder parents now, what they need answers for and community for, which a podcast creates easily, while building up your brand as like, okay, I trust these people to take care of my parents, because there's so much not only misinformation, but fear of getting caregivers that don't care, that building a deep sense of trust in your business is more important than, say, another business. So I feel like you have kind of like the perfect combination of a business that needs education and trust built. And so that would make it a good podcast.
Yeah. Tasha says, I'm relaunching a pod with my pod mate. It's called Definitely Not the One. We want to grow followers, listeners, and monetize. I heard you mention monetizing is best through products. We took off for 1 year, renamed our podcast, and now are trying to get back out there. Any tips?
All right, definitely not the one. Is it a divorce podcast? Can I get a few little bit more information on, or is it a
Yeah.
dating and relationships, or
Yeah.
what that looks like? Because I think we need to, I think this is a great time to think about what that strategy is in relaunching it. If you already relaunched it and feel like it was kind of a failed relaunching, I think you use this, almost pretend like it's beta and tell the audience, hey, once you've settled on the new vision and strategy, you tell who you naturally rekindled, what's going on. You bring that authenticity to it. Like, we took a break, we're back, our numbers are down, so we're going to relaunch again with this strategy, and we need your help. This is what's going to happen. This is who we're trying. We want your feedback. Take our survey. What do you want or need to know? What are the people in your lives experiencing? Do any of you want to be on the show and tell us your horrific dating or experience or your divorce? It's dating, relationship, finances, and everything in between. We are dead and fluent in American Sign Language.
Well, deaf and influence sign language.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would make, yeah.
Yeah.
That is super cool.
Yeah.
That is super cool. Okay. So, definitely, so it's about dating, relationships, and everything in between. We are deaf and fluent in ASL. I think that this makes me think that it's a video-based podcast
Probably.
first, and you could expand to a audio-based podcast with some AI tools now. So doing the whole thing in ASL and in transcript form to then translate into an audio version, and do a really cool disclaimer right at the beginning that they're supporting a ASL podcast that has been the audio has been generated by AI, but please engage with your video-based podcast. So that would be the first thing that I would think about in expanding who listens. So if it's only on YouTube, let's expand it to audio with the tools that we didn't have, that were not good enough probably when you did this originally. So thinking about how can you expand out while bringing people in. Hey, this is a video first podcast because of these reasons. The audio you're listening to now was generated with AI. We would really like you to engage with the video-based version, as well as share and support us in our journey around these topics. And then I would work from there on your strategy around the video portion. YouTube strategy and podcast strategy are similar, but have their own uniqueness. So I would even start in asking some questions about how they differ and what they generate. So the search engines within Apple and Spotify are still more like search engines, where YouTube is actually both search engine and algorithmic. And so based on what they have watched and listened to and searched in Google is going to tell them what to watch next. And so that just means that you need to maybe adjust the strategy slightly. But super neat idea, or what you do and how you do it. That's really cool. And if I can be supportive in any way or answer questions better, just let me know via email.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end here. We're way over time, but this has been so fantastic. But I have to ask one more question. So Ellie, you've talked to a lot of people. Who is the most famous person that you've worked with on a podcast?
Nathan Fillion, probably, in traditional fame sense, Hollywood fame.
Yeah.
We have a handful of celebrities, but he's probably the most famous. If you're unfamiliar with Nathan Fillion, the moment you laid eyes on him, you would be like, oh, that guy. So Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk have a podcast called Once We Were Spacemen that we were helped create and bring to life. And he is in it was a TV show called Firefly, and then a movie called Serenity,
Fantastic.
which was about what the podcast was really surrounding. The but he's in a couple of cop shows, and I just watched it, and for whatever reason, the name is like gone. But there's been several like detective cop TV shows. Like the moment you laid his eyes on him, he was in the new Superman. Like you would know him, The Rookie. Thank you for those of you for helping me out.
And Alan is in Resident Alien, one of my favorite TV shows too. Check that out if you haven't seen that. It's fantastic.
Okay, cool. And Taja, if I'm saying that correctly, you do speak, so cool. Sorry about my assumption there on that. But if I can be of any other ideas of support, I might need some time to noodle on it and talk about it with someone to come up with more, but happy to support.
Yep. The message is it's a lot easier if you work with an expert because you don't start from zero trying to get to one. You're already close to one already when you have somebody helping you out like Ellie. So we're going to send everybody the recording and the slides and Ellie's contact. And so if you have any questions, just reach out to Ellie. She's a great person. She's always ready to help. And if you're doing it, think about having an expert at your side. It'll make it a lot easier.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Janet, thanks for driving the ship as always.
Sure thing. Thanks for being here, Ellie. Thanks so much.
And Ellie, thanks again. And we will see everyone next week on another Toolkit Tuesday. Hope you have a great Tuesday. See you next time.